Hola. Okay, so now that we all have notes about how we form the present subjunctive and some of the basic uses, we need to get some information about how and when we use it. Cómo y cuando lo usamos, okay? So that's the goal of your notes today, how and when you use it. You will have some additional activities this week that discuss, of course, how and when we use the subjunctive, but if you feel that you'd like extra practice beyond what we provide you with this week, please let your teacher know and we'll see what we are able to get to you. You can also always go on Conjuguemos and practice a bit more there if you would like as well, okay? But the basic things to know, if you're looking at the skeletal notes, which hopefully you are, that number one, la oración of the sentence va a tener dos cláusulas con sujetos diferentes. So it's very important for you to realize that these are not simple sentences anymore with which we're working. You have two separate clauses, and each clause has to have a different subject. And we'll definitely be pointing that out as we go on in the presentation, okay? And van a ver la palabra que, the word que meaning that, between these two clauses, okay? So two clauses, two different subjects, separated with the word que. So if you take a look, for example, at the examples on the front page of the notes, you see three examples there that I'm going to translate for you. And you should write down the translations, and I would strongly advise, if you're a very visual learner, that you underline or circle or highlight the different subjects and as well the word que that separates them. So the first example we have is yo recomiendo que ustedes practiquen mucho. So yo is the subject of the first clause. Ustedes is the subject of the second clause. And you see the word que in the middle. And the translation is I recommend that you all practice a lot. Now you'll notice that the verb recomendar for recomiendo is conjugated in the present indicative or the regular present tense, and that the verb practicar is conjugated in the subjunctive. So the verb in the first clause in these cases will always be in the present indicative or regular present tense, and the verb in the second clause will always be in the present subjunctive. The second example sentence here is los estudiantes piden que la clase juegue matamoscas. So the students ask that the class play fly swatter, matamoscas, the fly swatter game. So piden is your first verb, the students ask, and it is in the present indicative. La clase is your second subject, and you see the verb juegue for jugar in the present subjunctive in the second clause, and the word que separating the two. Your final example, es dudoso que nosotros no tengamos tarea hoy. In a regular situation, of course, that's where we would be, because you almost always have homework in Spanish class. So we have, it's doubtful that we do not have homework today. Es, for it is your first subject, so it being that first subject in that impersonal expression there. You see the word que separating the two clauses. Our second subject is nosotros, and therefore the second verb is in the present subjunctive. And I'm going to take a second. You can probably hear my dog playing in the background, so apologize for all the collar jingling and banging and all that stuff in the background here. I'm working in my kitchen at this point in time, so a lot more noise than usual, I would guess. Okay, so next thing you need to be aware of is how you remember these rules. And at Framingham High, we often use the mnemonic device Weirdo to help us remember. So mainly, if the first clause or the part of the sentence before the word que has to do with wants and wishes, emotions, impersonal expressions, recommendations, doubts, or you see the expression ojalá, which is comes from the Arabic o Allah, which I translate as I really hope. You get the idea, okay? Then the verb in the second, and there's a change in subject. So you have one of these expressions or verbs in the first clause, the word que in the middle, and a change in subject in the second clause, between the first and the second clauses. You need to use the subjunctive in the second clause of the sentence, okay? So we're going to give you some more information here and some examples starting on Página 2. So for wants and wishes, the verbs you really need to know are querer, necesitar, preferir, exigir, esperar, and pedir, okay? So if you see one of these verbs, as it says on the top of your notes, in the first clause of the sentence, and the clauses have different subjects, you need to use the subjunctive in the second clause. So what I would like you all to do as you get there is pause your video and translate the two sentences that you see in the examples under wants and wishes into English. And I would also strongly advise, once again, especially if you're a visual learner, that you underline, highlight, or circle both the different subjects of the sentences and the word que that separates those two clauses. Once you're ready, you should move on, okay? And your teachers will ask you to share your translations with them when you are completely done. For emotions, once again, same situation. If you see one of these verbs in the first clause, and there's a change in subject between the first and second clause, and it's separated by the word que, you need to use the subjunctive. So we have gustar, encantar, molestar. You need to be aware that that means to annoy. Please keep that in mind. Enfadar, agradecer, interesar, and estar plus emotion. So for example, you say estoy triste que, estoy feliz que, estoy enojada que, you have a different subject in the second clause, then you need to use the subjunctive. So once again, pause the video, do the translations, give yourself that visual if you need it, and then be ready to move on. Impersonal expressions is something that you've already seen a little bit. You got these in the initial notes, so if there's something that you need to look up, I would strongly advise that you do so. And then once again, once you're ready, pause the video, do your translations and your underline circles, highlights if you need that visual reminder, and then unpause to move on to our last three letters, RDO. For R, we have recommendations. So we have recomendar, sugerir, insistir en, proponer, and it's important to remember that proponer can be irregular and that it does conjugate like the verb poner, requerir, prohibir, and permitir. So these verbs, if you see them in the first clause and there's a change in subject between the first and second clause, and you see the word que between those clauses right now, require the subjunctive. So once again, pause the video, do the translations, and then continue. Our second to last one is dudar. So if someone doubts something, if you're expressing doubt, and same rules if you see one of these verbs are expressed in the first clause, and these clauses have different subjects and are separated by the word que, you need to use the subjunctive in the second clause. So dudar, no estar convencido de, no es verdad or no es cierto, no estar seguro de, no creer, no pensar, y puede ser. So once again, you need to pause the video for the last time and do the translations, give yourself any visual reminders, and then continue on to ojalá, which you've already seen a little bit of when you're ready. So as I mentioned in the end, ojalá comes from the Arabic, o Allah. Is a very strong Arabic history in certain areas of Spain, and so the way I would translate it nowadays, or the way I translate it usually in class, is to say, as I said earlier, I really, you get the idea, hope, okay? So it would really translate kind of like I hope to God, but not everyone is going to want to use that expression, so it's just kind of like esperar times about 100, okay? So once you're ready and you're done, what you want to do is make sure that you do that last translation. And if you made a copy of the document and took the notes online, share it with your teacher, please. And otherwise, please take a photo of the notes you took or photos of the notes you took and share that with your teacher as well, so that we can make sure that you have accurate information and suggest corrections as needed, okay? Remember, you're not expected to be an expert on the subjunctive at this point in time, or by the end of this year, but having this information will be very helpful when we start next year, however that is, whether it's online, hybrid, or fully in the classroom. Stay safe and healthy.